Good morning. It is a Monday morning on the first Monday of April, and I am sitting here by the fireplace, and to be honest, I am procrastinating. My next task is going to be going out to do some work on this gate tower rental that I did a lot of work on last year. I'm just finishing up so I can rent it out. And I decided to aid in my quest of procrastination to make this video. And the subject of this video is going to be drama in BitcoinCash. So while some people think of drama as a negative thing, like unwanted, when it's applied to like television drama, like TNT, we know drama, they like advertise it as a positive. Like, you're looking for the drama and the entertainment, here you go. I think of it as like where there's smoke, there's fire. Like, the drama is the smoke, and the smoke only happens because of underlying dynamics, which are energetic, kind of, in a sense. And I've consistently covered BitcoinCash and some of the previous things about drama. Like, one of the big ones was the whole CoinFlex rug pull, and the community was really bought into this exchange called CoinFlex and this fork chain called Smart Bitcoin Cash. And for a while I was too. I bought into some of the hype about it. I think at least in one video, I think in like my 10 good reasons about Bitcoin Cash or something, I think one of the reasons was talking about Smart Bitcoin Cash and how it can do all the Ethereum stuff and whatnot. But that was before I had any direct relations with any of the people directly. I had just viewed some kind of advertising hype, and I'd extended my faith that I might have put in a whale in the community, extended that to the Smart Bitcoin Cash people. And so after I had direct relations with the people involved with that, it became clear to me very quickly that they were maligned with Bitcoin Cash and were essentially running a scam or a con to steal the community's money and attention and focus, and it was all malignant. And a lot of people in the community weren't ready to hear that when I said it, even though when I said it was literally less than a week, and I was just like calling them out on blast in the community channels and all of these different channels that I happen to be in, where there was common ground essentially. And that was like within a week, or really within at the apex of it, I got like banned from a channel or two, and then CoinFlex pulled the rug, and everybody who was put their faith in it lost their money. And at first the community still wasn't ready to hear my perspective, and it took a little bit of time for like that people to mentally come around to realize they had been conned and that they were the ones who were responsible, and me, being the messenger, was not in any way responsible for them losing their money. I was the one who was blowing the whistle, trying to help them to save their money. A more recent incident, and much less costly and serious and stuff, was in relation to the I call them the Caribbean crowd, or gang even, a group of people that in the Caribbean, they were hyping the Caribbean as this great place, the new flashy story for Bitcoin Cash. And it was also in relation to the same whale in the Bitcoin Cash space, but he kept pointing to somebody else, a guy named Sonny, being the person behind it, the shining bright star behind it. And similarly to the previous example, I was excited about it for a time, and then, similarly as the last example, after having direct communication with the parties involved, I started to see red flags with both that individual and then a politician down there who was really hyping it, and then another individual who was positioning himself to be kind of like the speaker of the community, the host of the conference, and there was just a number of red flags that, again, I had to throw the flag and call it out, and people didn't want to hear it. And yet, what has happened since is that that individual was basically riding on a gravy train, and when the money stopped, his support stopped, and he's also is actively blackmailing another supporter in the community who I don't want to name, but people in the community will know who's being blackmailed, because it's out in the open, the blackmail that he's doing, in order to get that person to change their content and muzzle their own speech. And then implied in the same blackmail is that they're blackmailing the same whale involved in the first two, in order to bend them to their will. And in past videos I had expressed my reservations, that's a kitty, about the individuals, about the whole situation. I had specifically called out the individual who has named himself Fiendish, a fiend, as part of that plot, essentially. And no one really wanted to hear it, and yet that was the outcome from what they called the conference. Which is basically, they didn't want to market it to the general public or even the local populace. It was only marketed to the sort of the core BitcoinCash community. And I had reached out to both the whale and probably the most important person in the space, who I also won't name, directly warning about that. My interpretation was that it was basically an intelligence operation, a honeypot kind of trap, in order to capture and entrap. And that's exactly what happened. So this other content creator, who at one point his life was threatened in relation to this conference if he didn't hand over the helm of creating this conference. It was that creator's idea in the first place. And then his life was threatened on at least one account, from my interpretation, clearly, publicly, in open chat, that he had to give up leading this conference and hand it over to this other person who was going to lead the conference, Sunny, as well as Fiendish. And so I directly warned the most important person in the community, not the whale, about this explicitly as a plot between these two people and a honeypot operation, because I want to protect that individual and I'm not their protector, but I just have the information, and what good is the information if it can't be utilized? So I pass the information along to the person who is most important and essential. And I don't know about the whale, whether the whale is completely co-opted. My interpretation of the whale is that they have the best of intentions, but because they're out in the open and publicly explicit about their support for Bitcoin Cash, they attract all of the predators, the parasites, because what Bitcoin represents, and Bitcoin Cash carries this torch, is a monetary revolution. And it's the greatest power center in the world is that of the central banks, the ability to directly create currency value and then to spend that infinitely. It's like infinite power in the free market to create any outcome that you want. So knowing that that's the most important power in the world, and once you understand that basically all the wars that are fought over the same central axis power of money control, what Bitcoin represents is a technological solution to that centralized access, to decentralize it and to create a form of sound currency that can honestly compete with fiat currency. You could say precious metals are a sound form of money, but they don't work well as a currency because you can't transact it easily digitally. So that's the problem that Bitcoin originally solved. And then Bitcoin got divided and conquered, subverted, so that BTC, which most people think of as Bitcoin now, no longer serves that function. And that's what BitcoinCash, the fork, was necessary in order to continue that monetary revolution. So all of that external force that results from the competition over that ability to have that power, that centralized central bank actors want to maintain that monopoly of power that they have. It's a warfare environment where they will fund and do whatever they can to eliminate any competition. Even though Bitcoin, the point of it is to decentralize that power, but that is, in some ways, it's an even bigger threat than another centralized power trying to take that over, because you can't necessarily attack it in the same ways. But because it's a community of people who are necessary to support that, they're very well versed in how to, in crowd dynamics, how to divide and conquer, subvert crowds and groups of people. So going into it with that in mind, because I've studied the history, I've been interested in generally strategy, like all the games that I like to play are strategy games. I went to a Warfare Institute, West Point, thinking that was like a good career for me, but then I realized before the end of the first year that you basically have to sell out in order to serve that institution, and that's not what I'm trying to do. So even though it was supposedly the biggest scholarship of and I went through the whole process. I had to go through interviews and background checks for clearance, and even got a vaccine or two to go there, and went through these stupid clubs of youth leadership and things I had no interest in, Boys State and all this, just so I could get admitted to West Point. And then I had to go to interviews with congressmen. I ended up getting a nomination from the state senator of Colorado, or the federal senator, but of the two senators in Colorado, Salazar nominated me as one of his Service Academy nominees. And people in my family, there was all this sort of attachment and expectation, all this sort of stuff attached to it. But because I realized that you have to sell out essentially in order to serve this organization, I had no interest in staying there. So at the end of the first year, I left the military academy. Point just being that I have the background, the history, and kind of the training in a certain way to be able to identify these patterns, to understand that the pattern, it's a known unknown. You know that the pattern is going to exist. You know that they're going to attack this competition. So then you just wait and see who exhibits those patterns. And then there's individuals who are clearly basically sending mixed messages, doublespeak, and maligned with Bitcoin Cash, while they position themselves to be leaders in the Bitcoin Cash space. So if you know what signs to look for, it's very clear to identify who these individuals are who do this. And then they also work in a group, so their community engagement, they, like a pack, they'll support each other in their various manipulations or attack vectors or methods of social influence, essentially. And so this guy Sonny, I like to think of him as a pirate, and the definition of a pirate is a privateer. And a privateer is actually, it's not just like some freelancing person who's just doing everything on their own agenda. A privateer is someone who is employed by a state. They're a private ship owner, a private armed vessel controller, captain, who is employed and basically licensed, or they're given some form of authority via the crown, and the British were the biggest employers of the privateers, to then attack the Spanish maritime trade, so that they would be able to show their papers at various ports that the British controlled, or if they had any run-in with the British, and then they would protect like those various people that they made alliances with. But their whole goal is to capture merchant ships. And they end up making their hideouts, their homes in the Caribbean, and that's basically like the background of why the Caribbean is so wealthy, and the whole kind of economic activity around the Caribbean. It's all based upon pirate activity. So this individual, Sonny, he fits that definition perfectly. His job is that he's like an office of the crown of selling passports, which is directly connected to the crown, and that's his business, is selling passports to this colony, it's a crown colony. So he's the one who's profiting off of people getting permission to use this crown colony port, essentially. And then he also has a monopoly on all the duty-free liquor trade in the territory, or multiple different islands, essentially. So it became very clear to me that that's his position. He's a modern-day pirate. And so his interrelations with this whale in the Bitcoin Cash space is essentially to capture them, to take them in, to treat them like king, to give them access to all the bonuses that the pirate king actually has, and to basically put on a big con to suck the value out of the whale, and to set them up in such a way that you can then control them. And at least in this one example of this other content creator who was then lured onto a yacht, and then there's attractive women, and then they get blackmailed and accused of raping these women, who nothing like that happened, and there's other witnesses of that happened, but they're blackmailed using that. So it's exactly what I warned about happening beforehand happened, exactly to the T. And with the goal of capturing this content creator, the whale has clearly already been captured. But it seems that what the whale has done is realizing, and I directly contacted the whale as well to warn him of this, but I'm sure at the time he didn't believe me, but perhaps after events have played out, he's realized the value of my warning, because it's been exactly what's happened. So he's distanced himself from these individuals who are maligned to him. And it's not just them, it's like, if you're in that environment, especially with the whole situation of Bitcoin, and you're one of the most outspoken people who's advocating for that monetary revolution, that Austrian economics, decentralize that power, put the power in the hands of the people, sound money, all of these great principles, and then you're also a whale in the space, you become a huge target. You could say I'm doing something similar, but I'm not a whale in the space. I have very minimal resources, and the way I've set myself up here, up off grid in this castle, it becomes very difficult to attack me, the attack vectors. And I've had multiple attack vectors, and people even living here, like active subversive agents living here with other groups of people. It's been a great learning lesson. And this individual, Sonny, he indirectly threatened my life as well, publicly over chat, but in an indirect way that most people wouldn't interpret, talking about sending a delivery person to me, and alluding to like fried chicken, as he's in a drunken state and playing Pirate King in his Caribbean domain, and I'm playing Sovereign in my King of My Little Hill here, but I'm not drunk. And as we interact over a public space where he has a big ego, and I'm basically like trying to root out the subversive actors in the Bitcoin Cash space, it resulted in him basically showing off his cards, which is the same thing that Fiendish has done on more than one account. But the reality is that the other people in the community, they're either in on it, or they're too kind of blind to be able to see the con before it plays out. Like there's one of the person who's like the admin of the group, he almost like brags about how many times he's gotten taken advantage of by various cons. It's like that means you're just the ultimate sucker if you like can't learn from your mistake after like the 7th time. It's not something to brag about. It's like you should learn. The more times you make a mistake, you have more opportunities to learn from that mistake so that it doesn't happen again. But I still respect that individual, the admin in that community, even though I recently have just kind of archived that community and gone away from it because I was the person engaging with it most, and I wasn't really being appreciated by the other people. But and the same actor in Phoenix and now this other person that is Phoenix is like the social attack vector, and then this guy named Tom is kind of like the engineer attack vector, and they're working together in order to influence the development of the community to prevent it from thriving, partially from the social perspective of continuing to put out this message as if everything is stuck and not going well, which can be that signal can be sent via a price signal because the enemy has unlimited funds to be able to send price signals, when in fact the development, the utility of Bitcoin Cash is thriving to its optimum on an ideal trajectory. And so it's like a decentralized community of individuals. What chance do they stand against the most powerful centralized organization in its ongoing efforts to divide and conquer that revolutionary thing? And it's a similar story of the United States, how the United States had to fight for independence against Great Britain, the crown, but then over time it got infiltrated by those financial monopolists via the central bank, and there was multiple wars fought over time. But it's like if you think about the fourth turning mentality, that not every generation has the same capacity for being great, essentially, because they grow up in different environments. And yet a centralized organization like the Crown organization or whatever, they have institutions that are training people to transcend the generation so that they always have people employed that are at their sort of apex of their ability to serve that centralized organization. And so that's why there's always going to be drama in relation to this revolutionary idea of Bitcoin, even unless it fails. So it's like the people in the other that have forked off of Bitcoin Cash, there's Bitcoin SV and there's eCash, they still inevitably end up focusing on Bitcoin Cash because that's where the fire still is. They both had an innovation, it didn't really work out for eCash, and it's not working out for SV. Their innovations were like short-term thinking and not like sticking to the long-term ideal, and so they circle back again. And so it's important to be inclusive to the ones who have a positive intent and who share the ideals of Bitcoin Cash, even though many are led astray by various characters or are lured astray via various carrots. So currently I'm just taking a step back from Bitcoin Cash, and I'm still a stakeholder, and I'm intending to utilize the new Cash token upgrade for my primary project, which is Elodium. So this off-grid foundation here is my Elodium, my estate, my property, held absolutely without any overlord and defended by myself. And the property encompasses a territory, which is the jurisdiction, which is created by that reality that there's no external authority, and in order to have an internal conflict resolution process, there's a jurisdiction from that. And this my Elodium and the territory are staked to the cooperative, which I've called Elodium capital A, whereas OG Foundation is my lowercase allodium. Every individual can have their own allodium. Anyone who has a house, if they claim their house, absolutely, and they, I forget the exact word, they renounce any overlords, any other claimants to their property. They occupy and they defend their own property. That property is by definition their allodium, and they can produce an allodial title as a derivative of the fact that it is their allodium. As the owner, the proprietor, they bear that title even without having the derivative on a piece of paper that they can hand over to demonstrate that title. The title is inherent. So that's the lowercase a, allodium, something everyone can have. Capital A, allodium, is the cooperative that has been created by me staking my allodium, this foundation, and the territory encompassed by it to the jurisdiction of the uppercase A, allodium. And so it's a group of sovereigns bound by a mutual ideology, which is written down, and by verbal contract, or contracted one way or another, verbally or written. Every sovereign in allodium has agreed to this ethos, this one-page contract of rights that we all acknowledge, that we all share, and the responsibilities that we all have to uphold and defend and secure those rights, and justice, and uphold truth. And so that's what I'm doing in my everyday life, and the stakes of what I'm doing are higher in this reality, or just as high in this reality as what I'm doing relative to Bitcoin Cash. But really more in this reality, because it's like you see what happened in the Civil War. Hundreds of thousands of people died because the centralized system wanted to impose itself on everyone and say, you are not allowed to have your independence and freedom because we have an army and say so. So I don't have a army or a confederacy of different states. It's just me, and I've got a castle on a hill, and the castle is not complete. And and I'm out in the open. I'm not hiding, and it's well known what I'm doing. And yet, for a martyr can be a dangerous thing, and so it's the attack vector against me primarily is to prevent me from having any momentum as far as the social aspect. And even without that, it's like, how many people really want to go live off grid when you can just have all the modern comforts of a modern house? And a lot of people will make that trade-off. They'll get into debt, or they'll take the free money from the government thinking it's free, not understanding that as they do so, they become subservient to that system, which isn't in their best interest, but only gives them carrots in order to control them. And I'm running out of time, so that's the end of the video. Bitcoin Cash drama, the end.